What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about my 5 favorite LG smartphones to pick up. Most of these I have reviewed except for this first one, the LG V60. Now I am saving up for this phone. It is a little expensive on eBay right now. It's around like $600-700, so definitely up there in price, and this is one of my favorite phones so far because of the reviews that I've read. It seems like a very solid phone. So it's a glass and metal design. It sort of keeps the classic LG V lineup that you will see later on in the video. It keeps that same design, very nice premium glass and metal design. It is IP68 dust and water resistant, and it does have a OLED display, so it's a 6.8 OLED display. It does have the little notch, and it's a 1080p display, 395 for the PPI. Now I'm used to LG usually putting 1440p displays in their phones, but I'm assuming they did this for battery life reasons. Now when I do get the phone, we'll go ahead and test that out for ourselves as usual, but of course it's going to have the latest version of Android. But the awesome thing about this is, of course, you get the Snapdragon 865. It's just going to be a monster when it comes to performance. It's going to be extremely fast with the Adreno 650. Now you do have micro SD support as well as 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. So this thing is going to be a beast, no problem flying through stuff. So they keep the headphone jack on here, which I love. It's because if you're into the quad DAC and just an overall excellent music experience, then that's something you're going to love. Stereo speakers are on here, NFC is on here, the fingerprint scanner is under the display. It seems pretty fast from what I've seen. You have a triple camera setup. It's a 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and a 0.3 megapixel depth sensor. You also have 8K video recording, which is pretty crazy at 30 FPS, and you also have a 10 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 4K. So really nice for people who like to vlog and stuff like that. Being able to shoot in 8K is just nuts on this phone. This phone has a massive 5000 milliamp battery with wireless charging as well, and usually 5000 milliamp battery, especially with this resolution display, should give you around 9 to 10 hours of screen on time from what I'm guessing. But like I said, we're gonna wait till we get it in-house. Next is the LG G7 for $200. This phone has aged so well since it was released. You can find it for 200 and under, 300 brand new, I believe. I'll put the links down below. Even cheaper if you get it on eBay. But this is one of my favorite phones in the $200 price bracket because of what you're getting. You're basically getting a flagship phone here. So you have a glass and metal design, very premium, IP68 dust and water resistant. You have an IPS display. It's a 6.1 inch 1440p display, 564 for the PPI. Just a beautiful display, very sharp. One of my favorite things about the phone. And of course you have the little notch up top, which isn't too bothersome. The best thing about this phone, what breathed a lot of light into it, was Android 10. So you have the Snapdragon 845 and the Adreno 630. So Android 10 just is a breeze on this phone. Everything is extremely fast. You can play games on high, Call of Duty, Fortnite, whatever. You can play on high settings, and it's just really awesome. You also have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. So again, very speedy, 3.5 millimeter jack with NFC as well. You also have a dual camera setup, 16 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. Now what I like to do is use Gcam on this phone, and I think it makes the pictures just look a little bit better than the stock camera app, but it takes perfectly fine pictures, especially in some good lighting. You have 4K video and an 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p. Battery life on here is pretty decent. I'm not gonna say it's amazing, but it's a 3000 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging with wireless charging as well, and you're looking at around 6 to 6 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time. I have done battery tests on, I believe, all of these phones on the list, so do check that out. Next is the LG G8, my next favorite phone, and I like this one a little bit better than the G7. It just doesn't have as good as a speaker, but this phone is going for around 240 to 300 in the renewed space, which is pretty crazy. Now if you want to get it brand new, it's going to cost you like $500 dollars, but I've gotten all these phones renewed and they're all in excellent condition, so I would recommend doing that. But excellent phone. Obviously it's a step up from the G7, and it's a beautiful design. I think a better design with the flat camera design on it. So you have IP68 dust and water resistant. You have a POLED display, a central difference, a big upgrade here from the IPS display on the G7, a 6.1 inch. It's pretty much the same resolution, 1440p, 564. Beautiful display, and just looks excellent. Vibrant colors, very bright. Just overall an excellent display here. This one comes with Android 10 out of the box, Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640, so it's a beast. Whatever you throw at it, it's going to be able to play on high settings, so it doesn't matter what game it is. Micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. This phone is very fast. Also, the cameras have been improved on this one. 12 megapixel standard, 16 megapixel ultra wide, 4K video. So if you're thinking about the G7, this one does take slightly better photos than the G7. You also have an 8 megapixel selfie camera. The headphone jack is still here, of course, NFC, and you also have a really good Face ID on here and Hand ID, and the fingerprint scanner is very fast as well. A 3,500 milliamp battery, a big upgrade because you're looking at around 8 hours to 8 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time. 21 watt fast charging and wireless charging as well. So this is an excellent pick if you really just want, a really good flagship phone. Next is the LG V40. So the price on this one kind of bounces around. Right now it's like 200 renewed, 300 renewed, so it just bounces up and down. But I will put those links down below. But this is like, think of it as the big G7 here. So that's basically what it is, with some essential differences. So you have pretty much the same design, glass and metal, IP68 dust and water resistant. On this one you do have the POLED, but it's a bigger display at 6.4 inches instead of the 6.1 inches. So you do have the 1440p display, 537 for the PPI. Beautiful display, very sharp with the little notch. This one is upgradable to Android 10. With the Snapdragon 845 and Adreno 630, you will be able to play most games on high, no problem. This one has micro SD support along with 64 gigs of internal storage and actually 6 gigs of RAM, so I never really have speed issues or stuttering problems with this phone. Of course, you have the headphone jack, NFC as well. So the cameras are actually much better on the V40 than on the G7. So if you want a bigger version of the G7, this is a really good one. 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. So you do have that telephoto lens on here for those portrait photos with 4K video, 30 or 60 FPS. You actually have a dual camera setup with 8 megapixel selfie camera and a 5 megapixel wide. It shoots in 1080p. The battery life on here is okay. It's a step up above the G7 because of the updates that it was getting. It was a step down below it, but updates have fixed that. 3,300 milliamp battery, 18 watt fast charging, wireless charging as well. If you want to see that battery drain test, please do watch that. Next is the LG V50. This one is a little more expensive. It's going to cost you around $300 to $400 because it's got the 5G thing, which I think is a little premature right now anyway. But this one is it's a flagship. It has the same design as the G8 pretty much, glass and metal design, IP68 dust and water resistant. But if you want a bigger version of the G8, you would be looking at this phone. So it's got a 6.4 inch display, 1440p, 538 for the PPI. This one comes with Android 10 out of the box, the same Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640, so excellent for gaming. Whatever you throw at it will be great. Micro SD support, 128 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. The cameras on here are the best out of the G7, G8, V40. So if you want the overall best, I think these are really good. It's a 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. 4K video. You still have the dual camera setup, 8 and 5 megapixel on the front. This one actually has stereo speakers. Now they're not super loud, but it's just the little speaker up front, but it is stereo and it is a little bit louder than the V40 and G8. So you do have NFC on here, the fingerprint scanner on the back, and this one has a 4,000 milliamp battery, and you're looking at around 8 to 8 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time with this one. 18 watt fast charging, wireless charging, of course. Next is the V35, which I think is a little awkward and gets forgotten about a lot. It comes in at around $250 new actually. So if you want just a brand new phone, you don't want to look in the renewed space, then this is a really good one. The design on here is a premium design, glass and metal, IP68. It has the POLED. This does have the smallest display out of all these phones at 6 inches, 1440p, 538 for the PPI. So if you want something a little bit more compact, then I would be looking at this one. This is basically like, you know, the V40, just a little bit smaller. So you do get Android 10 with this one. It is upgradable, Snapdragon 845 in the Adreno 630. So you will be able to play games no problem on high settings. It's a very fast phone, micro SD support, 64 gigs of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. You also have a dual camera setup. It's a 16 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K. Cameras on here are pretty good. It's on par with the V40. So very good cameras on here. You have an 8 megapixel standard. And you also have the headphone jack on here, NFC, fingerprint scanner on the back, which actually is a power button as well. You have a 3300 milliamp battery with 18 watt fast charging along with 10 watt wireless charging. So battery life is really good on here. You're looking at around 8 hours of screen on time, which is fine. So those are my favorite picks. Those are what I love about each phone. So thanks for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one.